One of the best things about being a coaster enthusiast is there's always something new. It's always changing, always evolving. One day you could say, oh my god, this is the coolest thing ever. And then the next you could see another model and say, get that bullshit out of my face, this is the best thing ever. With all the new technology at their disposal, manufacturers have had so much creative freedom at their fingertips that if you can dream it, you can make it. This has led to a lot of really cool models on the horizon, so today I'm going to be ranking them from top to bottom, worst to best. Now, there are quite a few, so I do want to jump into this right away. Enough dilly-dallying. When I first heard Mack was putting extreme spinning cars on their regular coasters, I was hyped. Imagine the potential of this. You could put it on Copperhead Strike, Helix, DC Rivals. Imagine spinning on DC Rivals. But then you think about it and you realize this isn't really a new coaster concept. This is just a car. It's like if Mack Rides just started making a new type of train to put on their existing coasters. It's cool and all, and I definitely think it's worthy of a mention, but it's not a new coaster concept. But I'm very curious to see where this ends up going. What parks will actually be willing to put this on one of their coasters? I got a good one. Time Traveler. But in reality, this is a really cool coaster concept that would have been a lot cooler if there was no fully fledged out Mack Extreme spinning coasters coming before it. Who's responsible for this? Funko Pop Hitler, perhaps? Intamin has always been known for building unique, top-of-the-line custom coaster models that distinguish themselves from the competition. Now, they've also dipped their toe in copying other manufacturers, but those have always been a hot mess. It's mostly the unique models that are the ones that stand out. Now this is not unique. Tell me one original thing coming from this model. I mean, come on, it's so obvious. You know the meme with the kid cheating off the other kid's homework and the other kid tells him to change a few things so the teacher doesn't notice? Yeah, that's basically this in a nutshell. It's so blatantly obvious, the inspiration, if you can even call it that. The one difference between this and the Mack Power Splash is the single rail design, which RMC uses on their RMC Raptors. Now, yeah, RMC doesn't own the single rail design, and Intamin's is slightly different, but come on, it's just combining two models. This is so clearly a ripoff of just two successful models. And also, who asked for this? Be real with me for a second. Who really enjoys water coasters, especially Intamin ones? The only water coasters people remotely enjoy are the Journey to Atlantis clones, and that's because of the theming, not because of the ride models themselves. I'm not particularly excited for this model, like, at all. I really couldn't care less even if my home park got one of these. There was a time when I would kill for a new Intamin model, but this is just annoying. I'm really disappointed with this one. So I love Skyrocket 2s, and it seems like that's the general consensus among enthusiasts. They're great rides and great for small parks, but that's the key. They're great for small parks. Intamin is super expensive and has a reputation of being unreliable, so I don't know that many parks will be willing to spend the cash for a model like this. The problem is, a lot of big chains don't want to work with Intamin either. So do I think we'll see any of these? I mean, definitely not in America. Maybe an overseas park, but what do I actually think of the model itself? Well, I did just say I love Skyrocket 2s, and this looks like a slightly improved version of a Skyrocket 2. So I'd say this looks pretty good. I don't actually know how cool an upside down launch will feel, but depending on how much speed you have going into it, it might feel cool. I don't know. To me, this looks like it could be a very forceless launch like Mack multi-launches. The rest of it pretty much just looks like a Skyrocket 2, but Intamin. It's slightly more twisty and slightly more aggressive and a little overly complicated, but it still looks like a lot of fun. I don't have a lot to say about these first few just because they're all kind of similar to models we already have. I think this looks cool, but nothing super special. So this is the last Intamin model on the list, and it is by far the best. The quality jump from the vertical LSM to this is pretty noticeable. This is a coaster model that I can actually be hyped for, sort of. We've already seen one of these announced for Australia at the time of recording, and it looks pretty good. I don't know if I would prefer this to the RMC Raptors, but the more I look at it, the more I realize how different they are from the Raptors. The Raptors are cloned rides meant to fit in tight but relatively simple plots of land. These Intamin coasters can go pretty much anywhere. I mean, just look at how close this is to the buildings when it's launching. It's really sandwiched in there, and the coaster has to keep winding around buildings in itself almost to the point where you could call it a terrain coaster. That might be a stretch, but the point is, these are much more customizable and versatile than the Raptors. The launching aspect makes it so parks can fit this practically in any plot of land, no matter how cluttered or small it may seem. I will say though, all of these Intamin hot racers don't look like they give great airtime. None of the layouts they showed off in the beginning really had a lot of super strong airtime hills, and neither does the one going to Australia. There were one or two on the Autodrome layout, but other than those big camelbacks, nothing really looks super impressive in the airtime department. It's a lot of twists and turns and whippy inversions. If you like that, then these models are perfect for you. But personally, I feel the RMC Raptors did a better job of delivering a more complete experience. Now, that's not to say these Intamin coasters are bad, because like I said, these are two separate things. But I just think that Intamin's take on the single rail coaster was a little disappointed. None of these were really that good. But I'm still excited for the Hot Racer, just not as much as I would have thought if you told me a couple months ago that Intamin was coming out with a single rail coaster. So out of all the models, this is the one we know the least about. We're not even 100% sure what it is, but we're like 99.9% sure it's a launch coaster. That seems close enough, so I'm just gonna speculate. So the current rumor on the streets is that this is a launch coaster, and if it is, number 4 is a good spot for it. If this is a surf coaster, then it has 2 across seating like on Intamin Blitzes. That would be a first for B&M. I mean, unless you count each side of a wing coaster, but that's stupid. This leads me to believe that this coaster model is going to be a bit wackier than other B&Ms. I mean, just look at the concept art. Look at these weird hills. I don't even know what to call them, but I love it. B&M has mastered the art of rinse and repeat, so it'll be interesting to see them innovating again and trying out new elements. I don't think the intensity will be quite on par with Intamin Blitz coasters, but maybe something like a new generation Vekoma. Not that I've been on one, but just by looking at POVs, they look a little less intense than Intamin Blitz coasters, but still not forceless. Or they could just make another forceless B&M looper with a launch, but I don't know if they would do that just based on the 2 across seating and these weird elements in the concept art. The one thing they really do have to get down though is the launch. The 2 B&Ms that have launches have really solid launches. I've heard Thunderbird's is apparently really good, and I really liked the Hulk's launch, but that's an incline, uses a tire system, so that doesn't really count. For the purposes of this video, we're going to assume that they're going to use the same LSM system on Thunderbird. If it does, then that would be really good. The biggest problem with mock multi-launches is their launches are kind of garbage. People have compared them to gliding on straight track, which when you think about it, is actually kind of sad. Intamin's launches are many times the highlight of the ride. Terran's second launch, Maverick's tunnel launch, Volcano's second launch. These are all considered some of the best parts of the rides. Mock's launches, they're bad, like really bad. You actually try to forget about the launches on mock coasters. So if B&M got down the launches like Intamin did and like on Thunderbird, the surf coaster could potentially even be better than mock multi-launches. If B&M took control of the launch coaster market with a surf coaster, then they would be a truly unstoppable force in the industry, which is both a good thing and a not so good thing. To be honest, I don't quite get the hype for the Axis coaster. Like, it's a cool model and all, and probably the most unique out of all of these models on the list, but it kind of looks gimmicky. And I mean, that's fine. Like, a lot of coasters are very gimmicky and are wildly successful, but they're never really considered great models. I think for what S&S was going for, they did a really good job. It seems like the next logical step forward after the suspended coaster and the 4D coaster. Looking back now, I just think, wow, we were really stupid. How did no one think of this before? I mean, it's such a cool concept, but it's also a pretty simple concept. It's just an inverted coaster that inverts you. And while I do think there was some creativity involved in making it happen, I mean, it's not that complicated of an idea. That being said, it's still a really cool looking model. Like I said, it's probably the most unique out of all of these on the list, as most of these have just been ripoffs of other pre-existing models, so this is a nice change of pace. This model has been one of the most speculated and talked about models already, so I don't really have a whole lot new to say, but I do want to say this. I don't know how soon we're going to get one of these. S&S unveiled a very polished animation, had a very successful prototype with them, with a lot of coverage, and then we never saw anything about it again. I'm sure there's one sort of on the horizon, but I don't know how close it actually is. But can you imagine how insane a 200+ foot Axis coaster would be? It could be on par with like Edge and Nika in terms of insanity. The fact that it's a controlled spin can make for some super crazy elements. Can you imagine a non-inverting 0G roll? Or a 0G stall over an airtime hill? With the Axis coaster, you can do that. We'll be able to see so many new, never seen before elements just because of how unique this concept is, and that is just so exciting to me. But there are still 2 more concepts that I'm slightly more hyped for. So the runner-up is RMC is like the hottest manufacturer right now. I get that Intamin is doing some cool stuff and S&S is starting to branch out a bit, but RMC is really where the hype is at. Their hybrids are just such a good model. So when you think about it, it was only a matter of time before someone tried to replicate it. I thought it would be a little longer before someone tried to replicate the Raptor, but considering how wildly successful RMC hybrids are, it's reasonable to assume another manufacturer would want a piece of that pie. That manufacturer in this case is GCI, but the inverting GCIs aren't a direct copy of the RMC conversions. It's more of GCI's adaptation, and I like that. These can truly, without a doubt, be called hybrid coasters. Switching from wood to steel is genius. I don't know who thought of this and how nobody else thought of it before, but it's genius. I feel like most people tend to say they prefer wood coasters over steel for that classic wooden feeling, but don't like how limited they are with creativity in their designs. Now, RMC has tried to take a stab at breaking the mold with this with launches and inversions, but the topper got rough, and they're not selling anymore, so I think they kind of just gave up. With this new true hybrid from GCI, they can keep the unique and authentic feel of wood for the large majority of the ride, but then when they want to do something crazy like an inversion, they can seamlessly switch to steel, then back to wood like we saw in White Lightning. Also, GCIs are just really fun. GCI has perfected their craft over the years, so a normal regular GCI part of it would be really good. Although a lot of their coasters are pretty similar, they really do have a winning formula. These rides are all really solid, and I can't wait to see it adapted on a 200+ foot scale. Now, I did talk about this in my Steel Vengeance video, but I really think a 500-foot RMC T-Rex could be the next best coaster in the world. Can you imagine the size of that thing? Can you imagine a lift hill being taller than King Ka, or being double Mako's height plus a little more? That's insane. If you think the B&M Gigas feel like you're falling forever, try almost doubling that. And I get that afterwards the layout is going to be a little more drawn out to accommodate for the speed, but honestly, I don't care. Slower elements don't necessarily mean lesser elements. Take B&M Hyper Camelbacks, for example. They're some of people's favorite elements, yet they're very long and drawn out, so they can kill off a lot of speed. Or could you imagine a 0G stall? Could you imagine taking a 0G stall at the height of Millennium Force? You would be so high off the ground with just a lap bar. And I know that the T-Rex doesn't automatically mean 500 foot, but I feel once we did get the ball rolling with the T-Rex, it's only a matter of time before Cedar Point or Energylandia asks for a 500 foot variant. And I know someone's going to bring it up, the issue of price, but honestly, single rail coasters as they are right now are pretty cheap. Like cheap enough so that Six Flags is willing to buy them. So would this really be that much more expensive than say a B&M Giga? I don't know if it would, which makes it in the budget of Cedar Fair and maybe a couple of other independent parks looking to splurge a little. RMC announced the T-Rex a couple years ago and we haven't really heard a lot about it. Now some say that this is because they canceled it, but that's just a rumor, and until they announce anything official, I'm going to keep chugging along with the speculation. So if it does end up happening, I think we could see one in the near future. Considering a lot of Raptors have been selling and parks wanting to build them larger, it's not out of the question to think RMC would want to go for their next model. Even if it's not a 500-foot T-Rex, this still takes the cake for me. RMC just has so much potential, and when they show off something creative and unique, it's just so exciting. Their layouts are just so good and so fresh. Yeah, they're getting a little similar to each other, but this would be a first of its kind. I can't imagine the crazy unique elements we could see for the T-Rex, just like we started seeing a lot of dive loops and cutbacks with the Raptors. Don't sleep on the T-Rex. I know it's been a while, but trust me, it'll be worth the wait. So hi guys, I just wanted to say before I signed off for today, thank you guys so much for all the support. It really means the world to me, and it's something that kind of came out of nowhere. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so if you made it this far, then could you please hit the sub button and turn on the bell so you don't miss my next post. I mean, I'm recording this pretty far in advance, so I might have already hit 1,000, but as of November 30th, I'm not quite there yet. So if you wouldn't mind subscribing, it would mean a lot. And if I am there, then hit the sub button anyways. You made it this far, so obviously you enjoyed the video. Then I can try and hit 2,000 subs. But that's all for me today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.